I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I just want to compare the wave sequencer with Granular and Wavetable synthesis. I looked at the wave sequencer and wondered what the finest resolution that I could have per step was, and it's about 10 milliseconds. You can go lower to 0 milliseconds, but at 0 milliseconds you don't really have enough time, even with 64 steps, to make any sample of significant length. And usually each step in a wavetable is a lot longer than that. In fact, I have the manual for two very new wavetable synthesizers, and usually each step or block in a wavetable is about 2048 samples. This is for pigments, and then also Hive has the default set to 248 unless you specify it as some other power of 2. Other more advanced wavetable synthesizers will let you dictate the, you can think of it as a window size per frame or whatever you want to call it. A lot of the terminology is interchangeable. And Halion 6 is one of those wavetable synthesizers, and in my opinion, it's the most advanced wavetable synthesizer around right now, even beyond pigments, but that's only in terms of pure wavetable synthesis. I do think Pigments is a pretty excellent synthesizer, and Hive actually has a scripting language, which is going to be in Zebra 3, which is going to be absolutely phenomenal and change the game as far as wavetable synthesis goes. I'm really hoping Howard hires me for that project because I'm pretty stoked off that synth. Anyway, let's talk about wavetable synthesis sounding like these other synthesis types. So we have our 640 millisecond sample chopped up into 10 milliseconds each. It's just me saying the word Chronos, and let's play that now. You'll be listening to the Chronos right here. Chronos. And you can hear that it is pretty choppy. By the way, even though you are seeing an animation here, these are muted, so you're only hearing sound from the Chronos right now. Chronos. Those artifacts are normal. I haven't tried to see if I could upload the samples in a different way to kind of get rid of those, but regardless, we do run into similar artifacts with these other synthesis types, so it seems pretty normal to me. Let me pop over to the program and mute it real fast. Let me switch pages on the Chronos. Some of the communication might be pretty slow with the editor just because of a fault of Windows not being able to route MIDI very well. Only one program at a time can use a MIDI driver, so I have MIDI from the Chronos being sent to this, whereas this can only send data to the Chronos. It means that when I'm switching between them, it lags quite a bit, actually. But anyway, let's listen to this Granular engine. This is the same 640 millisecond sample, and then I made the grain size 10 milliseconds long. I'm not going to explain how Steinberg breaks down their duration, but it's fine. Chronos. So you can hear that it is pretty choppy, and each grain does have a fade according to this shape right here. You can pick from a number of different shapes. And in the Chronos, I can actually create a fade here as well, and even set the kind of fade curve. And this diagram displays that, but I'll get into that a bit later. Let's hear what it sounds like with the Wavetable engine. Let me pop over to that. So again, I uploaded the same sample into here. I made 64 markers, or basically broke down the sample into 64 different little windows. I could actually set the samples per window, but it's fine the way it is because it's automatically going to make each one 10 milliseconds long. And hearing what that sounds like. Chronos, Chronos, Chronos. So you can hear that they all sound slightly different. I'll run through them more as we go on. But let's see how we can kind of modulate them in similar fashions. So I guess I'll pop back over to the Chronos. Let me unmute it. It's going to take a second. Like I said, it's going to lag a bit. And there it goes. It just completed. Let me go back to global. On the Chronos, I actually have to click global manually so I can see what's going on. So the first thing I want to do is let's actually stop running it. And this way, we're going to hear just one single step. Chronos. Whoops. Let's see. It didn't disable it on the Chronos. Let me see if I click this. Come on, editor, do your update thing. There it goes. Now it'll only have one step. So you're only listening to the first step right now. And I'm going to grab the filter envelope. This is the filter envelope of the program, of the HD1 program. And I can actually use that to step through manually. So let's try that out. I can go backwards, I can go forwards. It doesn't matter. It's funny, I can still hear a bit of lag just from using the editor, but this is the only way that I can really show you this via a screen recording. And again, let's do the same kind of thing on the other engines. Again, I'm just temporarily waiting for the Chronos to update. There it goes. So the Granular engine, we pop over to that. I will put my speed at 0. Now if I were to play that, we hear that, again, that similar sound. It should sound exactly the same. Like I said, these grains are only 10 milliseconds long, or this one grain is only 10 milliseconds long. And then I can... Whoops. And since I don't have it unlooped, if I were to get to the end, it would actually stop, but there we go. So you can hear that the granular synthesis engine is sounding very much like the wave sequencer. And let's check it out on an actual wavetable synth. Clicking over to that, going to the wavetable. I want to put my speed at 0. And then I have my position parameter right here. And since this engine is a bit more advanced, we do hear nice crossfading between each of the steps. Sounds great. Yep. Cool. So let's try something else. Let's go back to the Granular engine, and let me throw it on. Let's have the speed at 10%. Let's hear what that sounds like. And then let's do the same thing on the Chronos over here. Let me mute this. Pop back to global, and then I'll need to, again, wait for the Chronos to stop lagging from the editor. I want to put it back on run. And again, I have to wait for the Chronos to respond. Usually after it, once it takes a second to recognize the commands from the editor, it'll go a bit faster. Let me try to resend that. Come on, do your thing. Darn, I really need this to communicate because otherwise I can't. There it goes. Okay, so if basically this is taking 10 times as long to play through, right? So if I want this to take 10 times as long, then I actually have to expand it by, let's see, yeah, 1,000%. Because if I were to expand it by 100%, that would just be no change in value. So I have to go to 1,000%. 10 times 100% would end up being 100 milliseconds. So this is what 100 milliseconds would sound like on the Chronos, which is again 10 times as long. And I'm not hearing anything because I guess I forgot to unmute it. And again, we kind of have to wait for the lag to go away. There it goes. So you can hear it's a lot more steppy. Let me jump back into global real fast. And I want to see, yeah, I'm not using the filter envelope generator. Even though it's patched in, it's not actually doing anything. So I don't actually have to have it sound steppy like that. I can go into the sample parameter and create crossfades for each step. And we can kind of think of these steps as grains. I'll again mimic these with grains here. Let me go to my banks because I already set up a preset. And then I want to do the 10 millisecond logarithmic. And so on this one, I believe I do already have it at 100 milliseconds, but then I have the crossfade at 100 milliseconds. I don't really feel like going into how the crossfade works, but it's basically just, I'm going to be mimicking the exact same thing. And I'm using this logarithmic curve because this shape right here, this Welsh shape, is that's the most closely related shape to this logarithmic. So that sounds like this. Again, this is taking 10 times as long at 100 milliseconds per step, and then 100 millisecond crossfade for each step. So it's a lot more smooth. And it's kind of funny because it still takes the exact same amount of time for this sample to run through, since we are doing a really simple calculation of just 10 times the speed, or 10% the speed. 10 times the slowness, however you want to say it. So let's go into the Granular engine, and let's kind of mimic the same thing we did there with the crossfades, because in order to mimic those crossfades accurately, I have to actually use another grain and then double the grain duration. So yeah, muted. Let me unmute this. And let me go to 2 grains, and then I want this to be, what would that be? 5.22. So let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, I was right at 5.22. 5.22. I wish I could switch back and forth between these faster so we could really compare the level of smoothness. Let's go to the Wavetable engine and check that out. So we want our speed to be at 10%. Our position's at 0. Let's hear it. Similar, but of course we get different artifacts. Let's play further down the keyboard and hear what that sounds like. Sounds pretty cool. We could also change the kind of the phase alignments really, really fast with this synthesizer with Halion 6. Whereas like a click of a button will give me a totally different sound. Let me actually play it at the regular pitch. And actually, you could, if I, just for demonstration purposes, let me show you what it sounds like at 100% speed. And this is with the natural phase or whatever. Kronos. But then if I make each step if I align the phases, Kronos, you'd hear that it almost kind of takes away the pitch. Kronos. Yep. Kronos. Whereas it sounds much more natural with the natural phase alignment. Yeah, let's go back to the kind of sound design direction that we're going on. Sounds pretty cool. That's pretty much as far as I really want to take this sound. There is one other cool thing that I could show you. Just that with the Kronos, I find the landscape of it to be I'm just more familiar with it. So it's easier for me to navigate and do what I want to do. So for instance, if I wanted to put some drive on it. Which I think adds a really nice flavor. Also, if I wanted to throw it into an insert effect. That's all just with the wave sequencer. So it's pretty neat that wave sequencing can sound a lot like Granular and also Wavetable synthesis. And I could go through and add distortion and reverb to this, but I think you get the idea. And that's all that I wanted to go over on this vid. Thanks for watching.